Hello and welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show. I'm your host Mark Philpott, and I'm fortunate enough on this show to get to speak to people all across the world about their amazing travel experiences. Hello and welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here. If you're a first timer, welcome. It's great that you found us. Now dial us in, Global Travel Channel podcast show. Subscribe, hit all the buttons, do whatever you have to do to make sure that you always come back to listen to our podcast show. Don't forget, sign up on social media. We've got a very active social media presence and we bring you all the latest news from the Global Travel Channel. Now, we're all living through interesting times. Some of us see it as wonderful opportunities. Other people are a little bit more afraid of what's going on. It doesn't matter. We all deal with things in a different way. But today I'm going to be talking to two amazing people who have embraced not only life change, but also living the dream. Yes, if you're sitting at home at the moment and you've been thinking about, particularly in these times, you know what? I want to change things up. I want a little bit of a different life. I want to take things easier. I want to smell the roses more. Well, the couple I'm about to introduce you to are living exactly that life. We're going to ask them a lot of questions about the pros and cons of living on a sailboat. Yes, they're living on a sailboat and they're currently in the Caribbean in lockdown. So let's find out all about that, how they got there, and what life is like aboard their beautiful vessel. So it's a very warm welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show to Luuke and Robbert. Welcome to the show. So it's a very warm welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show to my dear friends Luuke and Robbert. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
How are you both today?
Well, we are fine. We are stuck in St. Martin in the Caribbean at the moment, and we are on anchor in a beautiful bay, and everything is available here, so you won't hear us complain about our situation at the moment.
We're not going to talk too much about that virus thing today because I thought we'd keep the show on a very positive keel, excuse the pun. And it is lovely to hear, though, that you're in the Caribbean in a lockdown, because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening going, oh my goodness, I wish I was with them.
Yeah, I think so too. So, but let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to share with the audience today how you got to where you are, because there's a lovely story that's unfolded to get you this far, and you obviously have very big plans that we're also going to talk about. So I'm not going to put any pressure on you two today, but I'm sure you're going to inspire someone out there listening to change their life today. I'm absolutely positive of that. Now, before we go any further, one of the things that I always do on my show is I offer my guests the opportunity to dedicate their show to someone special in their life. So who would you two like to dedicate your show to today?
Well, Mark, that's the other side of our situation at this moment, is that we have a daughter in Holland. She's 24 years old and her name is Aniek. She is studying. She's living in Rotterdam and she is very happy. She's a very strong girl and she inspires us to do this because she is giving us the opportunity to do it. So we would like to dedicate this show to her today because we love her so much.
Fantastic. Well, there's nothing like a couple of proud parents dedicating their show to their daughter. So, Aniek, this is for you in Rotterdam today. I hope it's you're getting some nice spring weather there in Rotterdam. Lots of things to talk about when it comes to sailing. So you've already mentioned that you're on a boat in the Caribbean, but let's go back to the beginning of this because my listeners would like to know, okay, how did this whole sailing thing start? How long have you been sailing for? When did you get your first boat? What inspired your sailing? Let's go right back to the beginning. So, Robbert, what about you? Can you tell us when you first got into a sailboat when you were a young kid?
Yeah, that was interesting. I lived in East Africa with my parents. And, we're from Holland, but my father worked there. And that was in Dar es Salaam. And A friend of mine had a boat and he didn't know how to sail, which was good because I never sailed before. My father made a little sketch how to put the sails depending on the wind direction. And my first sail was a race. Yep. And I was the first over the starting line, and I thought, oh, that cannot be right. Let's go back. And I didn't know the difference between jibing and tacking. So we capsized and finished last. And from there on, it got better every time. So I ended up racing and offshore racing and even making a profession out of the marine industry. So it really got out of hand, so to say.
So how old were you then back in that first time that you did the first race?
I was 11 at the time. So a lot of people started earlier, like an optimist, but we didn't live near the water before that. So I ended up sailing a little bit later.
And did you fall in love with it straight away? Was it something that you just immediately connected with?
I found it fantastic. And don't forget, with warm water and palm trees and white beaches, everything is nice on the water. But I really loved it. It's hard to explain the love for sailing. You're always there with yourself and playing with the elements and when you're young, a little bay is even a big piece of water. And when you grow older, the water's just immense. Wherever you sail, there's always an horizon. You can always go further, and that made it really really interesting. And then from Dar es Salaam we moved to Curacao, so not too far away from here. And I was 14 then, and my father bought me a sunfish, so I was sailing, and it was interesting at the time. There were only a handful of cruisers, like 2 or 3, which were at anchor in the Spanish water. And I would always sail up to them and have a chat. I spoke English because I went to the International School of Dar es Salaam, so I could communicate with them. And I was so inspired by them already, sailing around the world and coming to Curacao. And at that time, I already said, oh, this is what I want to do in my life. So it's been there for a very, very long time. Do that.
You have a lot to thank your father for in terms of the locations he chose to work in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about the fact of sailing is, at times it can be a lonesome and solitude thing if you're doing it by yourself, but with a crew, obviously it's different. What side of sailing appealed to you when you were younger? Was it going out there by yourself or with other people, or?
Well, actually, I always did both. I did a lot of small boat sailing by myself, which I like because then you're not dependent on the crew, and you cannot blame anybody else but yourself. And you can spend as much or as little time as you like. But I also like the big boat sailing. Even when I was 14 in Curacao, I did both. I was racing my sunfish, and I was racing cruisers. So I always liked to do both.
So it was just a matter of getting out on the water for you by the sound of it.
Yeah, as much as possible. And I was naughty because I had a little sunfish and I was 14. And of course I was not allowed to go offshore. But as I mentioned, the offshore sailing appealed to me, so I always went offshore in my sunfish. And then I was smart, so I always went up in first to make sure I could always get back to the Spanish water. There's always a way to come back going downwind, but nothing ever happened. Sure. So and it's always windy there. It's always 20-25 knots, so it's not like an easy peasy bit of sailing.
Yeah, exactly. What about you, Luuke? When did you first get into sailing?
Well, Mark, when I was young, when I was 3 months, I was born in Holland, and when I was 3 months, I went abroad with my family to Curacao, and
okay.
Yeah, and I've been living there for 11 years, and I was that's where I started sailing, where I got to into sailing at the Spanish water. And I think that I've got my how do you say that, my sailing license even before Robbert ever had one. So
I still don't have one.
You still don't. So, I'm very proud of that, but it doesn't bring me anything. But okay. So I think I was like 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that, when I started to sail sunfishes as well on the Spanish water. And so when I was 11, we went back to Holland with our family. And it was 11 years later that I met Robbert in Holland.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's about my story. And well, then I met Robbert, and
Yeah.
the first thing he said, yeah, well, I'm going to sail the weekend, and I'm like, okay, so what about me? Yeah, I mean, I'm going to wait on the jetty for you to come back. And so he said, well, come and join us. So we've been racing dragons for 15 years, I think. And at some point we bought our own dragon. And that was so much fun. And so that was, I think, till about we were 30 years. So we've been sailing a lot. And then our first adventure was going to Dubai because Robbert got a job there. And then we went together. We went to Dubai. And well, there, of course, Robbert did all the sailing because our daughter Aniek was born in Dubai. So for me, it was a little bit difficult. And so Robbert kept on sailing. And of course, we were there. We were at club, but not sailing, but having fun with the ladies,
Drinking wine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we came back to Holland when I was 34, because Robbert bought a company in the water sports industry.
Right.
And well, yeah, the dream of sailing has always been in our lives, Mark. It's always been there, but being from an older generation, we are almost in our 60s. And yeah, well, when we grew up, we were working. There was nothing that would make us go sailing because we didn't have the money. We didn't know how to do it.
And we didn't have the time, and it's always these cliche things, and you have to be careful that you sit in the old people's home and say, oh, once I had a dream, but I never did it because I was working and I was doing this and doing that. So one day I got fed up, and we decided, well, it's time to buy a boat. And even though, with all logic, it wasn't maybe the best timing, but once you make that decision, then it's funny how all the pieces fall together, because then you're forced to take decisions and you're forced to get things arranged, which otherwise you're just keeping ahead of you. Yeah. And it's been a good decision.
So when you made that decision to buy the boat, and I guess we're talking about the boat you're on today, was there an epiphany in life? Did you wake up both one morning and look at each other and said, right, let's go and do this? Or how did that actually unfold?
Yeah, well, it was my birthday, and we were together for 33 years, and I asked, well, did you get me a present today? And she said, well, after so many years, you've got enough pair of socks and things like that. And I said, okay, good, get in the car, and I'm going to buy a present for myself. So that's how we built the boat.
Fantastic. So it actually happened on your birthday. You started looking for it, did you? Or did you find it on your birthday?
No, well, it's an interesting story. We were looking for a monohull. And I'm a monohull racer, and we've raced monohulls all our lives. And actually, I was racing in the same team in Holland at that time, 10, 11 years. I did 15 years altogether. And the owner is a boat builder also, and he rented a monohull in the BVI's, and he was with his wife and his kid, and they were on a mooring, and it was raining, which it does here in the Caribbean sometimes. And he smoked, so he's sitting under the bimini. He couldn't stay dry and smoking his cigarette. And he looked over his shoulder, and there was this guy sitting on a catamaran with a glass of whiskey and a cigar. And I said, what am I doing wrong in my life? So the next day he went to the charter company. He said, I want a catamaran. And so he got a catamaran, and then he went out, and the advantage of the catamaran is the shallow draft. It's more stable. It doesn't rock. It's a huge amount of facilities that you have on the boat. And so he came back and said, Robbert, we're doing this all wrong in our lives. We should all go sailing catamarans. So I said, never. yes, but I said, no, never. And so he tried to convince me. And don't forget, he's a racing monohull sailor also all his life. So he said, yeah, you really have to do that. No, 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 no. Anyway, we were looking for this monohull at the Düsseldorf show. I think now it's maybe 5 years ago. And we actually wanted to buy the boat there. And the boat we were looking for wasn't there because they had stopped production and they were waiting for a remake of the model, etc., etc. So I walked back to my friend who has a booth there selling his boats. And we passed a lagoon stand. And I'm from the marine industry, so I know everybody. So the Dutch dealer said, hey, Robert, what are you doing here? I said, well, I wanted to buy a boat, but I'm a bit disappointed. And it wasn't there. He said, but why do you want to buy a monohull? You should buy a catamaran. I said, no, I don't want a catamaran. Have you ever been on one? I said, no, because I don't want one. He said, well, then you don't know what you talk about. So he opened the gate, and normally, you have to book for visiting, etc., etc. And so we said, okay, well, now we're here anyway. Let's have a look. And we stepped on, I think it was a Lagoon 42, and said, oh, wow, that's big. And we were so surprised how much space these boats have. And then we stepped on the 450, which of course was even bigger. And it was, the 450 was about the same price that we were looking for in a monohull. So, the budget wasn't the thing, but you had twice as amount of space. So then we were a bit confused. And then we started reading about it and, how often do they capsize? All the typical things that people think about catamarans. And we saw all these video films of people crossing oceans and visiting nice places and being comfortable at the same time. And then it was really Luuke that said, oh, I want to cross oceans. So, wow, that's great. So then actually, and this happened very quickly because Düsseldorf is in January, and in April, I think there's the catamaran show in south of France. So we went there. And from there on, actually, we made a selection for the boat that we wanted to have. Buying the boat and buying a catamaran, which we, 5 or 4 months before that, of the question. And
that's amazing. And I've heard a lot of stories about the monohulls versus catamarans, but your one about the cigar smoking friend sitting opposite, that's got to be one of the best I've ever heard, I think, in terms of the analogy between a monohull and a catamaran. That's brilliant. So for everybody listening who's not so nautically minded, we're talking here the difference between having a boat that is a single hull, a monohull, versus a catamaran, which is a dual hull, twin hull boat. So that's what we're talking about. And somebody who's been sailing all their lives in a monohull decided to buy a catamaran. Well, that's fantastic to hear.
You know what makes the big difference for me is when I read on the internet, when you're sailing around the world, that 90 to 95% of the time you're at anchor.
Yes.
So, the sailing characteristics of the boat is far less important than being comfortable. And, these days with the virus, we're only on anchor. So we're really glad that we made that choice. But as a racing sailor, you always think about, when you think about the boat, you're imagining yourself on the steering wheel, sailing to windward and looking at the sail, having this beautiful feeling of steering the boat, having control over it. But if that's only 5% of your time, that's when you sail around the world. If I would just stay in Holland and cruise around, I would probably not buy a catamaran. I probably would buy a different boat. But to sail around the world, especially if you follow the coconut route, which means you sail with the trade winds, so the wind is normally from behind. Then that's a really, for us, that was an important reason to choose that catamaran.
I've also heard that the wine fridges on catamarans are bigger than on monohulls. Is that true?
Yes, I can. I'm going to talk now because that's my favorite kind of thing. No, I mean it's really great on a cat. I mean, we have fridges, we have a freezer. We have hot water. We have showers. I mean, it's really, it's really a beautiful boat to sail around the world, and especially when you're getting a bit older, you might want to have some more comfort. And we are very happy with the choice we made. So we're on our way now, but we're stuck.
So tell us about. Let's go back to the beginning of the kind of round the world plan. Did you decide prior to getting the catamaran that was going to be the goal to sail around the world together?
No, they went hand in hand actually, because Luuke was looking at these video on YouTube. When we were looking at buying the catamaran, that was at the same time, and that's when she said, "Oh, I really want to sail around the world, rather than just stay in the Med or cruise around a bit." So they actually went hand in hand, and at first the catamaran was a logical choice for sailing around the world.
But it's a big decision, I must say. When I look back, I mean, it's now like 2.5 years ago, Mark, that we bought the boat.
It was delivered to us.
Yeah, and that we that we made this decision. It's not always easy. I mean, we have a fantastic life, but there's also many other sides. I mean, we don't see our family that much, especially our daughter, but also Robbert, his parents, who live in Spain at the moment for many years already. You know, you don't see them a lot. So there's it's not always sunshine and cocktails, as I say. I mean, there's a lot more to the choice you make to go around the world, and we'll see. Especially in this situation at the moment where we are in, what it will do. I mean, we also have no idea.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that, because I've had many guests on the show and they've all got incredible and inspiring stories of travel, and you two are no different. But I'm glad you mentioned that there is the flip side, because when people are sitting there listening to you today, they might think, oh, this is beautiful to be able to sit at anchor and bring out a glass of wine every night and watch the sunset. But as you're mentioning, there is another side to it. And, you know, you are two people also who are very competent sailors, and you've been doing it all your life. So for somebody who's not as competent, taking on the challenge of perhaps going around the world is a massive undertaking, and a lot of things need to be taken into consideration, don't they?
It is. If you did not grow up with sailing, I think it's possible, but it's quite a challenge. I mean, I even still find it challenging. You know, like when we crossed the Atlantic, the last week we had lots of wind. I mean, many squalls, and to be honest, that's not my favorite kind of thing. But it's part of, you know, the journey you make, and it's going to happen to everybody. Bad weather, you know, that maybe you have a problem with your mast or your beam, or your water maker is not working, or anything can happen on a boat. And there's always something going on. So it's not easy, but when you're young and you have the possibility to do something like this, I think it's the most challenging thing you can do in your life, going around the world in a boat.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. There's a lot of people that have never sailed before in their lives, and they buy a boat and they do the same thing. And then we look at each other, how do they do that, you know? And you know, we've got so much boat knowledge. So I suppose we are far more prepared than anybody else, and maybe over-prepared, because we know so much about it. But, you know, typically sailing the trade winds, if you stay out of the hurricanes, you know, it's a relatively easy sailing. We sailed the first year when we had the boat in the Mediterranean. It's terrible sailing there, because the wind can go from 0 to 50 knots in a few minutes. It's very unpredictable, and the waves are always coming from a different direction than the wind is blowing. And there the wind is either on the nose, 25 knots, or it's like 5 knots from behind. You know, it's I found the Med far more challenging than crossing the Atlantic. Yes, we had squalls, but you see them on the radar, so you're prepared. And the trade wind is from behind, so you just know what you have. So actually, I found the crossing not as challenging as sailing in the Mediterranean, for instance.
Well, I found the crossing very challenging.
I'm gonna ask you both quite a lot of questions about the Atlantic crossing, but before we get there, I just wanted to go back to something that you said before, Luuke, about the YouTube experiences and looking at other people doing these things on YouTube. Do you think that these, and I watch a lot of them myself, you know, these people out there doing the sailing around the world on sailboats, do you think they make it look too easy for what it really is? Do they oversell the dream?
I know what you mean, but I'm like, you know, I'm not following that anymore because we don't have, well, the opportunity to do it. But you might be right, because what people show you is the fun they have, and you know how nice it is, and the nice places they are, and it's only sometimes that you see that it's not always, you know, like that. You might be true in saying that. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's move on, and we're going to talk about the Atlantic crossing now. And what I wanted to start off with was letting my listeners know, what's the name of your boat and how did it get that name?
Boat is called 8, like the number 8. And the boat is called that because this boat is hull number 8, so it's the 8th boat of this series. 8 is a lucky number in many cultures. It's about, well, it's our 8th boat. You know, we had a dragon, and we have a day boat in Holland, and we had all sorts of boat, but this is number 8.
Right.
And our boat is inaugurated on the 8th of the 8th. And the funny thing is,
Wow.
yeah, it's funny, since we have the boat and we call her 8. You know, I open my computer and the first thing I see is, you know, that round thing, and it's got an 8 inside.
The black snooker ball.
The snooker ball's got an 8 inside. Really, Mark, from the moment we, you know, decided that she was going to call 8, 8 is coming from all places, everywhere, and it's 8 here. 8. It's really funny, and I at this time I don't know what it means, but there must be something with that number.
You know, it's really nice. It can be translated in any language as long as you can count to 10, which normally they can. So,
Yeah.
After all those things that you just mentioned, there was no doubt that the boat had to be called 8. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
I think so too. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
Okay, let's get on to the Atlantic crossing, because a lot of people listening today would be tuning in to hear about how you conquered the Atlantic. And I guess in terms of letting people know that there is a formula, if you like, and there's a world cruising club that organises an amazing event called the Ark. And I'll let you explain, maybe, Robbert, what the Ark is all about and how that got started and why it's so appealing to people on cruising boats.
yeah, I can't remember how long ago the Ark started, but it's a long time ago. And you know, there's a lot of people that want to cross the Atlantic, but many people are insecure because, you know, it's a long way. They are not really sure how to prepare. They're not really sure, you know, how dangerous it's going to be. And it gives everybody a good sense of security if there's other boats in the neighborhood. And so it's nice to go with the whole fleet. And I think somewhere down the road, that's how the Ark started. And it's true, you know, it's nice to know that somebody is within a couple of hours away. If anything happens, there's always someone that has a spare part, or always someone that has medicine on board that may be needed. You know, most boats, they cross in about 18 days, and it sounds like an enormous amount of time on a boat. But it passes so quickly. But it gives a good feeling. And what is nice with the Ark, that there's good presentations before you leave about navigation, about safety, and I think there's always looking somebody over your shoulder, which is nice if you're less experienced. And I enjoyed it a lot. And you know, the other aspect of it, but that's very personal. You know, I always say, 2 boats sailing the same direction is a race, you know. I like the competitive element. So it also keeps you busy looking at other boats, who's going faster, where are they, what routes are they taking, and why may they take this route. And so it kept me busy anyway. So I really enjoyed the Ark. I would really advise people for a first crossing to do something in a bigger group like this, because you learn so much from it. Also by talking to other people who've done it maybe a couple of times. It's really good to do.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept, and for people who are listening today who want a little bit more history about the Ark, it was actually started in 1986 by a very famous sailor called Jimmy Cornell, and Jimmy was actually born in Romania, and he lived most of his life in Britain and is still alive today, and he married an English lady called Gwenda. He's actually 80 at the moment, Jimmy Cornell, and the concept was to create an event where people could gather together to cruise across these big oceans, and this is where the Ark came from in terms of going from Europe across to the Caribbean. So what Robbert and Luuke are talking about today is this experience where a group of cruisers got together who otherwise might have been a little bit shy to take on their mighty Atlantic, and under the power of each boat have gone in a group across the Atlantic. So what time of the year does it actually start, Robbert?
This year the start was November 24th.
Okay, November. And whereabouts do you begin from?
Oh, you started in the Canary Islands, in Las Palmas, and you cross over to St. Lucia, which is one of the islands in the Caribbean.
So how many crew did you have on board this year?
We were with 6. You know, when we first saw our boat, we were a bit overwhelmed how big it is. You know, we bought it just of a digital presentation because it was a new design. So there wasn't a model that we could actually look in real life. And we looked at the 44-foot version of it, and we said, oh, okay. And we had a bit of sense of feeling, and our boat is 47 foot. And you think, oh, that's just a little bit bigger. But it's so much more, you know, every foot boat gets bigger, it really feels a lot more bigger. When we picked up our boat in La Rochelle, bringing it to Holland, we said, oh, well, let's go with 6, you know, because we need the help actually to sail that boat. So, and first sail that we decided to do the Atlantic crossing with 6. We could have done it with 4. It would have made it easier. If you just think about the catering, you know, now we had to cook like 600 meals, and otherwise when you go with 4 you only have to do 400 meals. And it's just not the meals, it's, you know, you have to stock everything also. And the more people you have on board, the more of a variety of foods you need, because everybody has their own taste and own preference. So you know, sailing with 6 instead of 4 is not just 50% more stock, but it's actually even more than that. And we've got a 3-cabin boat, so everybody had his own cabin and own head, which is fine. But if we would do it again, we would go with 4, because.
Right. And how did you select the crew for this particular journey? Were they basically friends, or did you rely on having good sailors on board, or both?
Well, both, of course. You know, to begin with, you want to have good, experienced sailors, and you know, having sailed so much, most of our friends are very good sailors, and.
Yeah, Luuke, I was going to ask you in terms of that first few hours when you left Gran Canaria to take off on the trip. What were the emotions inside when you kind of said goodbye to land?
Well, it is special, I must say. I mean, you all have the feeling like, oh, it's going to happen now. I mean, we're leaving. We're going to do this, you know, big trip. It's a big thing. It's not like, you know, you take an aircraft and 2 hours later you're somewhere. No, you're going on a journey of at least 18 days, and you have no clue what is going to happen. Anything can happen. So once you leave the dock, it is special. I mean, there's a lot of noise. There's people looking at you from everywhere. It's kind of a, you know, a farewell party when you're leaving, and yeah, it feels very special, I must say. And so we left the marina, and well, we were all excited. We were almost the first to leave the, well, how do you say?
Starting line.
To leave the starting line. We had our spinnakers on. And my God, it was amazing. The feeling was, it was like, yoo-hoo, we're going now. And, you know, it was so nice. Yeah, it's very special, I must say. It is, yeah.
Now I've got to ask you both, because when all this was going on, there was about to be a massive problem around the world with toilet paper. Did you have enough toilet paper on board?
Yeah.
Well, our major concern was to have enough wine. So when everybody was hoarding toilet paper, we were hoarding wine. But actually, that started when we actually were here. At that time there was no coronavirus. But honestly, when people were here on the islands buying all the toilet paper, we bought all the wine.
When you left Gran Canaria and you finally started the race, is it actually called a race?
A rally.
It's actually a rally, but
Rally.
for other people, they make it a race.
For Robbert, it's a race, because if there's more than 2 boats, then you have a race.
Yeah.
So for Robbert, it's a race, and for me, it's just let's get there safe and enjoy. And so there is 2 different ways of looking at it, definitely.
But I like to push the boat, and I really try to take advantage of the weather systems. And we actually sailed one of the shortest routes of the boats participating. So we did quite well in terms of passage time. We were one of the first Group B catamarans to finish, or actually the first one to finish in St. Lucia.
Okay, Robert, I'm going to put you on the spot now and give us some statistics for my listeners, and so they can understand a little bit about your technical world of sailing. So what was the total distance in terms of nautical miles that you actually sailed across the Atlantic?
I think we did just little than 2,800 miles.
It was 2,867 miles.
Well, there we are. Fantastic, Luuke. And something else that's measured a lot for sailors too, is particularly when they're doing a race or a rally like this, is how far they can go in 24 hours. So what was your best 24-hour distance?
I think it was 191 miles.
So how many catamarans were there in the rally versus monohull boats?
I think a quarter of the whole fleet, but we have to check the statistics, were catamarans.
Okay. Now, for people listening who might not know this, you go through a number of time zone changes when you go across Atlantic. How many in total?
Actually, from Gran Canaria, there's 5 time zones. And it's interesting then, how do you deal with that? And we just set the clock at Greenwich Mean Time, and we lived on the Greenwich Mean Time clock all the time until we arrived, and then we adjusted our clock.
Yeah. So, Luuke, what was your kind of emotional attachment to being out there in the Atlantic after a couple of days? And I guess you go through a process where you become more and more comfortable with life at sea like that. So how was it after a few days for you? Did you get into a routine? What was your daily routine on board?
Well, it depends. Well, of course, you're in a, how do you say that? In a shift watch system. And we divided our watches between the 3 couples. So we were doing our watches together. So if one couple was, doing the boat, the other ones could either sleep or cook or, do whatever you like. So we did all kind of things. But for me, the best moment was at some point that Robbert went to bed. Like when it's okay weather, I can handle that sort of on my own, and the rest was sleeping. And it was early morning, like 6 or something, and there was nobody here in the cockpit. And it's, I think, then that you have the feeling what it is to be outside on an ocean. The weather was lovely. The sun was coming up, and I think that for me was my best moment of the whole journey. Being in the ocean, on the ocean, looking at the sea. That was beautiful. That's beautiful. And for the rest, Mark, it's busy on board. I mean, you have to cook. You have to decide, you have to make decisions, there's so much to do all day long, so it's busy, and we had fun times as well, because we did a half wake party, and that was because we did not drink alcohol at all, none of us. But halfway we decided that we had to get into the groove, and have a small rum coke, and we turned on the music. We drank one rum coke. I had two, to be honest.
It's okay. You can tell us. We're only going to 95 countries around the world today.
Okay. And we were having a party, and we were dancing and singing, and it was just fun, And we had another party which was organized by one of our crews, which was really nice, because on the 5th of December in Holland, Santa Claus is coming, and I don't think in many countries it's done, but.
Right.
It's an old man sitting on his horse, and he's bringing presents for all the children, and so you get a present and you get a poem.
Poem.
With a poem. So one of our crew, they had a present for all the people on board, and with a poem, but an up-to-date poem about what happened before we left, during the time we were sailing. Well, they organized it, and that was really brilliant. I mean, that's nice that you share that kind of things. I mean, you need to do something together as well. So that was really nice. Yeah, we enjoyed it.
That sounds fantastic. Now, Robbert, was there any troubles with the boat during the crossing? Did you have any major issues?
Yes and no. When we started, we hoisted our asymmetrical spinnaker, and we were on the starting line at the gun. So we were, on the catamarans, they split up the fleet between the fast ones with the dagger boards, and they're the really fast catamarans, and like the cruising catamaran. So we were on the cruising catamaran. And we had the spinnaker, and we were just keeping up with the faster catamarans, because the wind direction was really in favor of our sail, and we just kept it up, and we were having so much fun, enjoying the race with all the boats around us. And then when you get a little bit further, you get the acceleration zones. That's where the wind picks up around the island. It just gets accelerated to 30-35 knots, and that's when the top of our asymmetrical spinnaker blew out. And, well, we have lots of other sails, so we changed to another sail. So the next day, I took out the sewing machine and had some spare fabric. And, I know how to make sails. I made some sails when I was younger, just for the fun of it. And so I spent like 6-7 hours to sew up a new top for our asymmetrical spinnaker, and it's still there, and it's probably stronger than it's ever been. So that's one problem we had. The other thing is our water maker stopped working on day one. Up to then we had used it for about 2 years without any issue, and somehow the clutch, just melted. Something went wrong there. It took me an hour to figure out where the problem was, and then I made a new clutch from a piece of Delrin that I had in the boat. I'm an engineer.
Right.
So I had to make a little drawing how to make a clutch. Did it in AutoCAD, which is a technical drawing program. Printed it out and stuck it onto the piece of Delrin, and then drilled the holes and cut out the piece of plastic and put it in place. And since then, it's still running that way, and it's probably better than the original rubber coupling, which is there.
Fantastic.
So a sewing machine is a good thing to have on board. It depends a bit on how much you push the boat. And as I said, I'd like to push the boat, so then you're going to rip some sails. And by the way, we've got 2 water makers, and the preparation for world cruising, you really have to think about your boat and contingencies. And, having water is very important. And we've got a 750-liter water tank. So whatever happens, I said, every day we've got to make sure the tank is full. But either way, we've got 2 water makers. So that was not a big problem, but I prefer to have everything working.
Now I want to talk about the water maker on your boat, because there's a bit of a rumor going around the world at the moment through the sailing community that I've heard about, that your water maker actually attracts whales. Is that right?
No. It's we've got a Watt&C hydro generator. That's like dragging a small propeller behind your boat to generate electricity. And water is important and electricity is important. And, with 2 engines and 2 alternators, solar panels, a generator with 2 chargers, and having a water and sea hydro generator, we're pretty well covered.
Yeah.
But it was funny. The water and sea hydro generator makes a humming sound, and we had like 4 or 5 days. We had a minke whale chasing us, and every time it approached us from the side where the water maker or the hydro generator is, and then it would come close to that unit, turn the belly towards it, and then disappear under the boat and end up on the port bow. And it was always the same motion. And I didn't hear anybody else having the winky male. Wasn't sure whether it was the same one or different ones. We couldn't really tell. But it was that behavior that made me think, well, maybe it is what and see that it's attracting that whale. But it was an incredible sight. The minke whale isn't the biggest whale in the world, but it's still bigger than our boat, I think, or about the same size. So it was very impressive, and it.
So are you saying that your water maker was making the whale get excited?
No, it was not the water maker. It's the hydro generator. So
the hydro thing.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
That's making the noise, not the water maker.
Okay.
We think,
fascinating.
Mark, we think that the hydro generator did that. I mean, the whale was with us for 3-4 days, and it's a huge sight if you see it. If it's along your boat, it's really it's beautiful. It's amazing. If you see such a big animal so close to your boat, I mean, we were all like, "Duh! Look at this!" And really nice. Yeah.
And they're hard to spot because they disappear like 15 minutes underwater. Because they take up air. It's not like a dolphin, the dolphin comes up all the time and they play with you. But the minke whale, they take a breath of air and then they disappear for 50 minutes. You have no idea where it is. And then every time it ended up on the starboard stern close to the hydro generator.
Right. Fascinating. Now tell us both, what are the sunsets like across the Atlantic versus being in the Mediterranean, for instance?
Well, it's all different. I love sunsets a lot. I photograph them a lot. The thing is, if you're on an ocean, there's only a horizon. So it's the whole part that colors the environment. In the Med, it's different. You see. Most of the time, you see land behind it, and it's a different thing. But there's one thing that a sunset and a sunrise are one of the most beautiful things to look at. If you sit on the back of your boat and you're looking at a sunrise or a sunset and having a sundowner, it's magical. I mean, and wherever you are, it's a magical thing for me at least. So beautiful.
Now tell me, when you're out there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, is it actually possible? You're talking about how busy it is on the boat with always doing something, but is it possible to feel completely disconnected from the rest of the world at that stage?
I think it is possible. That depends probably on how many people, and I mean you don't have any internet. The only thing we can do is get all the weather information by email. We can email. You can't go on internet or like that. I mean, you're just disconnected. So, as the space is still limited when you are with 6 people, for me at least, when you are together, it's hard to get that feeling that you're disconnected or something, because there's always somebody around. It's the only time when I had that feeling when I was here alone in the morning, nobody around, and then you can get that feeling that you are alone on a boat in the middle of an ocean. But it's hard when there's many people around, for me at least. So
and don't forget, there's always boats around, and the emailing, with our daughter and with friends and with other boats. There's a lot of communication going around. The only thing I miss personally is reading the news. I like to read the news, and that's not possible. We didn't have internet, but. There's always someone ashore that when really something interesting happens in the world, that they send you that information.
Yeah. There's a couple of questions that I haven't asked that I'd really like to get to for the sake of our listeners who are kind of right on the edge now of going and buying a boat and doing something amazing with it. So let's. I'm really interested to know what it was like when you sighted land at the end of the crossing. So what time of the day was it when you first saw land?
It was about, I think, 12 p.m. or 2 p.m. Local time. It was the mid of the day anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's exciting when you see land. And, the whole crossing went by so quickly. The only thing that took ages is when you see land and by the time you're really there. Because then you say, well, like 6 hours to go, and it just takes ages and ages. You're looking at your clock. Oh, why aren't we there? So, but it is exciting to see land, of course. And you can imagine in the Middle Ages when Columbus came there for the first time. He didn't even know where he was going, and they must have been far more excited than we were. At least we knew what we were seeing. With modern technology, that's pretty easy. But it was very exciting. But it's also then, oh shit, it's gonna end now. We're almost there, and we really enjoyed the crossing. But it's good. It meant seeing chapter number 2. Chapter 1 being the crossing, and that chapter 2 is enjoying the Caribbean. So it was. It's like a mixed feeling, but it was good. It's always nice to see land.
Well, was there a sense of a change amongst the crew with the adrenaline after you actually arrived, in terms of a bit of a letdown that that part of the journey had gone?
Well, what was really nice when you arrive in St. Lucia, now the organization is there at the dock with a rum punch and people applauding, and it's a nice feeling when you arrive. They make it special. It would have been different when you were there by yourself or just sailing by yourself, but because of the big group and the people, and you have like a family feeling, and everybody says, "Yeah, you're there, and fantastic that you made it," and and that's really nice. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, Luuke, what's your favourite thing on the boat?
My favorite thing. Oh, that's.
Besides the wine fridge.
Yeah, exactly. I was whispering that.
Did you hear Robbert whispering that?
I did, yeah. So I wanted to have a different answer than the wine fridge.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah. Well, to be honest, Mark, there are so many. This boat for us is so nice, so perfect. I mean, there's not really something which is better or more, but there's one thing which I really appreciate. That sounds a little bit stupid maybe, but we have hot water all the time. I mean, and that's something which I really like, because sometimes on boats it's just the seawater that you're having, but we have fresh water and it's hot. So when we're divers, so when we do a dive and you come on board and you have that nice feeling, it's I mean, that's pure luxury for me, and I do have a washing machine and things like that, but that's not that important. Well, it's important, but it's different. It's like that's easy.
I'm a little bit disappointed in you both, because I'm a huge fan of Wim Hof from the Netherlands, and he's the cold water man.
I know.
Well, we're the opposite of him.
That's why
everything in life has a counterpart, and we're the counterparts of Wim Hof.
And that's why we are, Mark. That's why we are in the Caribbean. We are, we're looking for warmer climates, and that's really something we enjoy a lot. I mean, the weather is beautiful in the Caribbean. It's we can swim, and we can, we don't have to. You don't have to wear any clothes if you don't want to, and that's really something we like about this part of the world. It's that's really very nice.
Well, I'm really disappointed now, because I thought every Dutch person was jumping into ice baths at the end of the day and doing all of that.
No, we only swim at midday, because then it's the warmest.
Hey, Robbert, I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, because I want to pull you up on the history of the Atlantic crossing. Do you know who the first person was to sail across the Atlantic?
Columbus.
No, the first person to cross the Atlantic by sailboat was Leif Erikson from Norway.
Oh, okay.
I think I've read about it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And do you know why he sailed across the Atlantic?
No.
He got lost.
That's a good reason.
Yeah, he was going home to Norway and he went in the wrong direction. So we're talking about in 1000 AD. He registered as the first person that ever sailed across the Atlantic. Most people say Columbus, but it's not true. Yeah.
Oh, well.
I might have taught you something about sailing today that you didn't know.
Always something to learn. Never stops.
Okay, so as we know, you're in lockdown now. You've done the amazing Ark Rally across the Atlantic, which sounds like an absolutely wonderful time.
Yeah.
And you don't know really where and when you're going to go next. So what's the plan at the moment?
Well, the plan is to go to Bonaire. It's one of the Dutch islands, and they're sort of outside of the hurricane belt. But it's locked down. We are in touch with the government there. And so we're waiting for approval to sail across. But either way, we have to leave here on June 1st for safety reasons. And then we'll just go there and then we'll see what happens. You know, maybe they put it.
So how far away is that from where you are now?
But just 3 days, 3 nights. So it's not very far. And it's 600 miles and or 500 miles, something like that. It's not too far, but it's a safer place to be than here. And
it's challenging times, Mark, now for cruisers, for people who are on boats. I mean, some people, I'm talking about Dutch people, are going back, because they have no clue, what to do. And we decided to stay. And that's a bit adventurous because if we're not allowed, to one of those islands, those ABC islands, well, then we don't have a plan B because there is no plan B. Everything is locked. So sailing is also adventurous at some point, and we'll see what happens in a month. It's about 5 weeks that we have to wait, and we'll see.
Yeah. In principle, you see two things happening, or three. Either people put their boat on a freighter and they freight it back to Europe, or people sail back to Europe, or people just stay here and they want to be out of the hurricane zone. So either they go to Grenada or Trinidad in that direction, or they go to the ABC Islands, or a little bit north you can go to Panama, which is also safe. So those are basically the three options. But we don't want to go back to Europe. We want to sail around the world, and going back to Europe is the wrong way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we have to start all over again, So we decided to stay in this area, and we'll find a safe place. And I'm pretty sure that that some of the islands will open up soon, for whatever reason, either out of safety. And don't forget, we've been on a boat for 6 weeks, so if we have the virus, we would have been dead already.
Yeah.
There's no reason to accept us, and we have no problem at all to go in quarantine for another
14 days.
For another 14 days. And that's interesting when you do an Atlantic crossing. You think about 18 days. What am I going to do for 18 days? We're now for 45 days on the boat, and we still enjoy ourselves and do our thing. Yeah. So time gets very relative in these challenging times, and it's good. It's good to know that you can be on yourself for such a long time.
So once you get on, and let's just say, and I'm sending you very positive vibrations here, because we believe that the world's slowly starting to open up again, and you're going to be okay, and you're going to be able to get underway. What is the plan in terms of continuing around the world? Do you need to be, or do you want to be somewhere by a specific time as far as the seasons go?
No. Well, we don't really have a schedule. We've got some idea, and we'd love to fly to Holland for 4 weeks or 6 weeks in the summer. We leave the boat behind during the hurricane season, be in Holland for a short time, and then fly back to the boat, because that's basically our home, and then enjoy the time in the ABC Islands. And after the hurricane season, early December, end of November, we want to go back up to, let's say, the BVI, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, those islands. And then next year in hurricane season, we'd like to sail up to New York. I think it would make a great picture to have the boat in front of the Statue of Liberty.
I can't wait.
And we've got some friends in Newport that we'd like to visit. And So then by the time winter starts, which means, it's the sailing season again in the Caribbean, we'd like to go south and then through the Panama Canal into the Pacific, and then take it from there.
Right. And go your way.
Yeah,
Yes.
go and visit you somehow.
Well, I was going to say that Oscar and I might see you outside the Statue of Liberty, because we might be on a boat around about the same time there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know about your project, but I didn't know that you wanted to, that your planning was to be there at that time. Oh, that would be fantastic.
Before I let you go today, I'd really like you to spend a couple of minutes, if you can, talking to my audience about, life-changing decisions and taking that big step to go and live your dream, and what's behind that, and I guess what the price is of not doing it as well. Because a lot of people might be listening to your story today going, wow, that's fantastic, but I don't think I can do that, and I might leave it until I'm a bit older to do it. So what would your advice be to those people?
Well, Mark, that's of course a very difficult question. I'm always thinking, what if our daughter, if Aniek would ask me the question, Mom, if I want to do, whatever, if you want to go sailing or traveling, or it doesn't matter what, do your dream. Should I do it when I'm younger, or should I first, get out, make a career, earn a lot of money, to do it? It's a question which is, in my head for a long time, and I still don't know the precise answer, but I think in these times, in these days, if you see what's happening to the world, I think my answer would be go as soon as possible. Just do it. And when you enjoy whatever you do, that's the best thing you can do in life. Try to follow your dream and do it with all the passion you have. Really, that's what I would say.
What about you, Robbert? What's your view?
Yeah, well, I have this saying, and I always say, I don't want to be the richest corpse in the cemetery. You can work all your life, be successful, and that's challenging too. Working and doing things, and then in your dreams your boat gets bigger and bigger and bigger because you earn some more money. But before you're too old to do it, and too old to enjoy it. And I'm so glad, we're not the youngest, but we're also not the oldest. I'm really glad that we made that decision. And honestly, it would have been a lot easier to stay at home. Everything is easier to stay at home. You just sit there, drink a beer, watch television. That's the easiest thing to do. But you miss so much of the world, and it's so nice to see what's happening. And you understand that both of us grew up abroad, so for us the threshold is maybe a little bit lower, but the world is so beautiful and so nice, and enjoy it and go and have a look. And we always traveled a lot, been on safaris, but always by plane, and that's different. Now we have our home, which is floating in an adventure. Everything is an adventure, and we can just take it wherever we want to go. And that is so nice. And but you have to have time to do that. And we see a lot of other people doing it. And there's a lot of people that are in their 30s and 40s, and they take an older boat. And when you're young, your demandings are much less. You don't need the washing machine. You don't need this. You don't need that. They can do it on a much smaller budget. And they see the same things as we do, and they have the same fun that we do. So whatever position you are, there's always a chance to do it. And don't hold back. Just go. But be prepared. Think about your trip. Think about your safety. Think about preparing your boat. It's always costing a little bit more money than you think. So whatever budget you have, try and double it.
But take the plunge, Mark. Just do it.
Yeah.
Really.
Just do it. Yeah.
Which means don't buy too big of a boat to begin with. Just make sure you have some money in your pocket when you start. So take a smaller boat. Everything. Nothing is as seaworthy as a ping pong ball. So if you have a boat which is watertight and you can close the hatches, you'll survive. But be prepared to make sure the boat is in good shape, and then go.
Great advice from both of you. And look, that's a great way to end the show today. I want to thank you both for taking the time out from your Caribbean sundowners to talk to me and my audience today on the show. It's been wonderful finally catching up with you both.
Mm-hmm.
And after following your amazing journey online, which I'm going to continue to do. And I'll tell you what, we've got to get you back on the show later on after you've made some more crossings of the world. Maybe the Pacific, after the Pacific, we can catch up with you again as well.
We would love to do that, Mark. And thank you so much for inviting us. It was our first time doing a podcast. So I'm very excited to listen to it when it's ready. And again, thank you so much. It was really nice talking to you.
You're very welcome, both of you. And don't forget, this dedication's going out to Luuke and Robert's daughter, Aniek, up there in the Netherlands in Rotterdam today. So we wish you well. Fair winds, both of you, and we will speak again soon.
Yes, thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Have a nice day. Bye.
There we are. That was a wonderful Dutch couple, Luuke and Robbert, talking to me, sitting on their beautiful catamaran sailing boat in the Caribbean, letting time go by, as we all are, waiting for this lockdown to finish. I hope you enjoyed their journey right from the time when they started sailing to getting their wonderful boat and taking off on an adventure where you never know what's going to happen. I guess that's the motto of the story today. Expect the unexpected. If you're looking for more episodes from the Global Travel Channel podcast show, all you've got to do is head on over to our website, www.globaltravelchannel.com. There you'll find all of our previous episodes. If you want to download them, you can also download them from the website. You can download them from places like Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, iTunes, under the podcast section, a whole host of places that are all listed there on the website. Now, don't forget, we're also on YouTube. So under the Global Travel Channel on YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts there. Give us a comment. Give us a review. Tell us how we're going. Tell us what guests you love. And if you really love some of our guests, why not vote for them in the Global Travel Channel Podcast Awards? Yes, the awards are coming up on June the 9th, 2020. And we're going to be selecting, or the audience is going to be selecting, the winners of a whole lot of different categories. Again, you can check all that out on our website at www.globaltravelchannel.com/awards. That's all there. And if you really love our content, please tell someone else about our podcast show. Yes, we're trying to get as many people around the world as we can to listen to our podcast. And all you've got to do is say, hey, have you listened to the Global Travel Channel podcast show? It's really good. They've got some amazing guests, which is true. You're telling a true story. Anyway, I would appreciate that very much if you spread the news. Okay, well, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed a little sailing adventure today. And I look forward to being back with you all again very shortly on the Global Travel Channel podcast show. My name's Mark Philpott. Until we meet again, stay safe, everyone.